So I've got a couple things that I want to share today. One of them is just a workflow that we just published probably about an hour ago. So pretty hot off the presses. And then, and I think it's a pretty innovative use case, and some of you will definitely find a way to make it work for you. And then we're going to dive into kind of what I've been talking about over the last 3 or 4 days on LinkedIn, and really start to introduce the concept of, and we're going to use GPTs as really an example, but I firmly believe that we're reaching different phases when it comes to lead generation and automation, right? So, I think the first phase where most of us started, right, is we go to a database, we get information, like we go in and we say, Apollo, for example, give me all the founders of this particular niche. Here's your emails. We send the outbound. And then tools like Clay and many other tools have been coming along, and they've become more frequent every single day, where there's some form of automation built into our lead generation approach. So it's no longer let's go to Apollo and get this type of lead. It's let's use some type of signal inference, particular criteria. Let's get a lead. Let's enhance it with AI. Let's use signal-based intelligence to say if somebody took this action or they previously had this type of tool or this type of customer, something that we're using data to drive a more specific lead, right? And we're doing that, more and more automated, but still there's a lot of manual aspects of that. Like even if you're to use Clay, like I do, there's still a process you have to go through today to run 1,000 leads in Clay, right? It just doesn't just happen, right? And I think we're starting to beginning to enter that third phase, right? Where yes, there is some kind of input or criteria definition, but more and more, especially as we watch like OpenAI and Google and Cohere, they're doing a lot more around embeddings. They're doing a lot more around vectorized databases off knowledge, and a lot more towards the AI agent, kind of approach, right? Which, sure, there's a whole bunch of tools that are out there on Facebook and on the internet that claim to be AI agents, and probably in the loose definition of the word probably already are. But what I'm talking about is just true empirical automation, where I can go to a tool and say, find me, this many leads that fit this exact criteria, that can call a multitude of databases and then get those results, right? So all that is to say that I think we're getting closer to that third phase, right? There was an article I shared probably 2-3 weeks ago that described this a lot more intelligently than I am, but I kind of want to introduce you today into more of that third concept and getting you thinking about the fact that things are happening fast, and maybe today we're not completely there, but you have some level of control of getting yourself there faster if you know which tools to use. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, and that'll be the goal of today. So a little bit more technical and forward thinking, but I've seen just the quality of the conversations that go on in this group, and I don't want to make everything just about like what cool workflow can Josh create today, and then how does everybody else try to figure out how to use it. So with that, let me check the chat and just make sure there's no questions, and then we'll fire away. So good attendance today, better than it's been the last few days. So excited to see this. So let's start with, the workflow concept. So let me share my screen here. All right. Cool. So this is a workflow. One of the things I've seen a lot is, and been asked this question a lot, is like, how do we track ads, right? That's obviously money that companies are spending where they're investing in advertising, right? And so it's a good signal that if what you're offering is in relation to any type of marketing, that a company is willing to spend money on some form of ads, right? Let me give you an SEO example, right? So if a company is willing to run ads on particular keywords and or topics within Google, it's a good indication that at least they have some propensity to want to spend money or capable of spending money on SEO, right? And so, you can loosely define that correlation, but I've always really wanted to see, like, could we capture ad data? So I spent a little time doing research. There is a Google ad transparency database as well as a LinkedIn ads transparency database. I haven't quite figured out yet how to scrape the LinkedIn one. I think I have a solution for that through Apify, but it didn't take long to kind of figure out how to do the Google ads. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. There's a couple APIs. I think one of them, SerpAPI.dev. The one I have right here is called the SerpAPI. And so a little bit about this, just so, there's a lot more to this than this specific use case, but they do have a lot of different capabilities built within this tool. I've only signed up for a free account, full transparency. So I'm not selling anything here. Just signed up, went in, signed up for a free account. You can see that's me. I'm on the free plan. I've done 17 searches so far. I think there's a lot of capabilities with this tool. I mean, if you just look at the different API capabilities that are already built out, it essentially means they've already done the API work for you, and you just have to figure out how to translate moving that API into Clay. And so it took me a little while to do that, but I focused on the Google Ads Transparency API, right? So, without getting too much into API work, you could drill down what I'm going to show you even further with specific body, functions. But all I did here is I went to this API right here, and then I'm going to dynamically change the actual search based off the company name. So if we go into the Google Ads Transparency Center, it should be this here. This is what it looks like, right? So I'm going to give you an example. From what I can tell, there's a couple of different ways you can do inputs, right? So you can do times, you can do, locations. I just tried to make it simple, and so I didn't put any time parameters in there, but I'll just use instantly as an example, right? So if I type in instantly AI, and maybe I have to type in instantly, but there they are. And you can see pretty clearly, here's their ads, right? And so this is how it works via the website. If you look at my business, content marketing media, I have run a few ads, which is why I'm willing to use myself as an example. And you can see my poorly placed ad there. So I wanted to try to recreate this with Clay, right? So we came into Clay, just kind of give you a basic idea of how we did this. And we just used a website. One of the things I noticed with this input here it's a little finicky, right? So like I noticed if I type like Clay, for example, there's so many different Clays. So the search parameters with this aren't really that good. They're like, you can put in the topic. I don't want political ads, but I notice you can also put in the website. So even like when I type in the website for Clay, like, even though it gives me clay.com, the results aren't Clay, right? So one of the cautions I'll say is this is definitely not an end all be all. So definitely kind of pay attention. I don't know that I would do this at any kind of scale, without double checking my inputs, but the inputs are a little bit limited, right? You got search by advertiser or website name, right? So Clay is a great example of where this is clearly not Clay, the Clay I was looking for with the outputs. So kind of give you that caveat, but I did run enough where I felt confident it was worth sharing. And so if we look at SEMrush here as an example, I have their website. I did run a Clay enrichment. You don't have to do this, but I just thought, hey, let me get the actual company name as what comes across LinkedIn. So this is just a simple find company through LinkedIn. And then here we have the company name. And then I've done the API work for you. So I'll show you here what all you would need to do is, and I know this is on recording, but it's a free plan, so I don't care. You would just need to change your API key, and then the input is dynamic, right? So there's no body to this. The JSON work is done down here. Again, same thing. Here's the API key. So you would replace it like you have with other, API workflows we talked about. But all this is doing is calling that API and it's inputting that search, and then we're getting results, right? So replace, this is dynamic based off this field. API key is your API key. And again, why not try it for free? Because you can, do 100 runs. What did it say we could do? Do 100 searches. So why not see how good it is and figure out what works for you? But that's it. So that workflow is done. And then the output is pretty robust. So I did SEMrush, and you do get a lot of data. So as I drive in here, you can see dates shown, target domain, ad creative. So if you're not familiar with what happens in Clay when you have all these nested values, like this is one column, right? So as we dive into this one column, we see a whole bunch of data, right? So we see, 39 different values, and within those is even more data. So again, I would say open your imagination. One of the things I thought about, and I had time to do it, but about a month ago or a month and a half ago, I built a workflow where I used Google Vision to scrape or take an image of the URL, which was, like in this case, is available right here. So here's the ad, and then came up with some dynamic way to comment around that, like, great. So I imagine in this case, it'd be like, great API call, or not great API call, but great, visual on your SEO tools ad. I'd love to talk to you about how we could make that better. I don't know. I'm just, giving you different use cases, but that's something you want to kind of think about is like, what can you actually do with this data? And then where can you go from there with it, right? Because, I think most of us know is lead generation success increases the more specific you are, right? So if you're using signals like this, right, we know that they've run an ad, we're looking at the ad, and then we take that a step further and personalize maybe relation to our offer off that ad, we're only increasing the chance that we're going to get a reply, right? So just tons of data here with this. And then, one of the things you can do when you get an output like this is to summarize that output with AI, right? So here we have a huge list within all of these nested parameters. And if you weren't familiar with when you get tables like this or outputs like this, there's this button here that says take action on a list. And so you can do filtering. So if you want to filter for specific things, you can write each item to a new row. So in this case, that would be a lot of items, 40 different items. Or you can use ask questions with AI. So I use this a lot, ask questions with AI. And so that's what I did in this case. And then from there, I just wrote a prompt, right? So I said, summarize the 5 most recent ads with 3 sentences or more. Also list out the date of each ad and speak to what the ad is about. Provide the ad type and sort the output in paragraphs in a professional way. So you see it's ingesting that column, those 40 items right there, ad creatives. And that's it. It wasn't a complex prompt. I'm running my own API key here. And so this costs 2.5 cents to do. So essentially I just pulled all of SEMrush's ad data for 2.5 cents, and the output's good. I mean, it tells me like the date the ad was run, what the ad was about, and I could add that as a column so you can see that a little cleaner, but it's not bad. It gives me a lot of detail that I could utilize then for copy. So just, the goal here is just to really kind of give you the opportunity to get to this data and then utilize your imagination or your creativity to come up with a way to turn this into a relevant lead. Now, is it really truly relative that they ran ads on April 26th, which is over a year ago? maybe not. I mean, it is SEMrush, but um, I picked them on examples. I can imagine this being exponentially more effective on a hyper specific lead list. So this is here. I'll share this workflow with you guys when we share the recording today, so you have access to it. Just remember, the only thing I think, you decide if you want to enrich the company like I did. You can obviously pull that out if you just want to go with company name. And then additionally, you'd want to substitute your API key here, which you can get directly from here. You can see mine right there. It's my free API key that came with my free 100 searches. So there are other tools that do that. I think SerpAPI.dev is one that Eric uses a lot. It's right here that you can get. Look, this one, it looks like you can get 2,500 queries. I haven't used this one, but I know he's a big fan of it. So I have no doubt it's reliable. I just found this one. I can't even remember how I found it. And I was impressed by really just all the different other options here, right? Like Google autocomplete, what you could do with that from an SEO perspective, like events, if you had a tent company that set up tents, I don't know. Even just some of the ones like Walmart, Home Depot, YouTube, like there's an immense amount of APIs. The API schema is going to be the same. So I think it's a great opportunity if someone wants to dive a little bit deeper into, is there a real good use case for Google Jobs? Now, some of this data obviously is available in Clay, like Google Search. But I don't think you can go into Clay and find eBay data, right? Or Google Hotels or Google Flights. So again, I thought it was a pretty powerful tool to bring in just a whole bunch of other lead gen type information. And that's all we have for that. So I saw a question. Let me make sure I'm addressing these questions here. Yeah. So Jason asked, can you ask a question with AI and do you have to use your own credits? Yeah. So in this case, I am actually using my own API to answer your question. So if I come down here, then you can see I'm mapped to my own API key. So yeah, I mean, so
that's awesome.
I'm just reading. Yeah. And Jason, you can speak up out loud if you want, if I'm missing. I'm trying to read through your whole question.
Well, I noticed I was sending it to somebody's bot. I was like, no wonder no one sees my question. And then I was like, send it to Josh. I was like, it's trying to hit the main bucket there. So now I like it. The other thing that you showed in there was you have their ads. You could build a prompt and re-engineer their ads because a lot of people are running really old Google ads that are like just archaic to begin with. And they're probably still kind of working. So the ad guy doesn't even care and he doesn't even bother to change them. So you could have a prompt that says like rewrite the first 3 ads and output it as the body, kind of like what you do with how you build your own, cold email campaigns with your writing articles. Like same thing, like here's an output of actual rewritten, here's how I would make them better, because it's just a prompt that you would build because you're limited in the number of characters for description and title. And then the last thing I was pointing out is that there's a company who just started offering what you're showing, but they just do it as a service. So what you're showing is like build it yourself, which is great.
Yeah, and I mean, the nice thing about ads when it comes down to it, Jason, is in LinkedIn too, like, and I think a lot of it is political, but because of all the things that happened in the last election, but I believe they're doing it for the sake of transparency, and we just have an opportunity to utilize that transparency. It's very much like the open source concept, to utilize that transparency for lead gen, right? Because to your exact point, from a photo perspective, like imagine just using this to get all the images that people are using. And then, again, I don't know if this would work, but it'd probably be worth trying, is just using, something built into Clay to create a new image and be like, look at your ad and here's what I can do for you better, right? To your scenario from a text. There's a lot of different, I think, use cases.
Yeah, because you're saying like a display ad, you could remake a display ad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
There's plenty of tools out there. Yeah, and I think realistically, I haven't tried it, but if you guys were noticing on this list on the left here, there's even like the YouTube search API. I mean, maybe we're not there yet with video, but we're probably not far away where you could even make a video that's better than the video they have. So just, again, it's, I believe very much in the concept of we're only limited by the tech that we have and the data we can get to, right? And so really the point of this was to demonstrate that here's a whole nother aspect of data that you can get to from a cost-effective perspective, and then utilizing your imagination to come up with, what use cases or what signal generation you can utilize to go and generate business. Thank you, Jason, for speaking up. Let's see. All right. So yeah, so one of the questions, I have a question related to finding people after finding retail stores using Google Maps, right? Is there any way to find retail store owners' names without using click credits? Yeah, there is. I mean, so it's tough, right? It's definitely not 100% accurate. The way I have found, whether it be business owner names or whatever, especially in using Google Business Profiles as the input data source, which is, essentially what you're saying, using Google Maps, is I just use Claygent as number one. And you can use Claygent without Clay credits, right? So you would have to use your OpenAI key. You can even use Claude now as well. So let me show that question or answer that question. So and just to summarize, the question in the chat is, can you find business owners without using Clay credits? And I say the answer is yes. It's not always easy, but you can go to Claygent and come here, and you see how I'm using my OpenAI key versus actually using a Clay credit. The other way you can do it is you can use other models. There is Claude Haiku in there now. And let me see if I can find it here. There it is, model. So you can use other models besides GPT. Claude Opus is more expensive, but you can use Haiku, which is relatively cheap compared to Opus and probably even GPT-4 Omni. So the one drawback that we've all run into with Claude, though, is that you get rate limited pretty easily. So I think the only way to overcome that is to email them and ask them to bump you up and or purchase credits in advance. That seems to give you more rate limits, but you can find business owners this way. It's definitely not foolproof though. So I've done it at scale, probably about a couple thousand leads at a time, and you're going to find about 50 to 60% doing it this way. The other way I've done it is to use Cohere. Same in some of my other workflows where we use Cohere for research. I've used Cohere, and the website that you get from the GBP is where I point the Cohere to, and then ask it to find the owner. And it's just prompting. So I think it can be done. I've done it, but the hit rate's about 50% successfully. So unfortunately, it's just not a data field that the Google Business Profile outputs. And so it's not going to come easy. So you'll have to do it through other means. So hopefully that answers your question. Not yet, Hanson. Hanson asks, have I found anything with Facebook ads? Not yet, but it's just really because I haven't tried. So I think if we can find an Apify scraper, like with this one, we could get to it via API. I know for the LinkedIn one, it has to be done through Apify. I just haven't built it yet. There's likely one maybe for Facebook ads and Apify too. So that's something we can look at, Instagram, etc. But not yet, unfortunately. All right, so I got through all the questions and we got 34 minutes left. So let's get to phase 2 of this, which is what do we do with ChatGPT and GPTs specifically? So let's talk about GPTs for a second. Why are they more important than they've been the last 3 months? Well, I think the biggest change, if you don't know, when it comes to GPTs, is that OpenAI announced last week that they have opened up GPTs to everybody. So previously, to access a GPT, you had to be a paid subscriber of ChatGPT. And last week, they made GPTs available for everybody. So the GPT market is pretty big. I just clicked on Explore GPTs there, but there are a lot of tools in there already, right? Stuff that people have built. And, I don't know that there's a ton of stuff around lead generation or cold email. I know Instantly has their own GPT for copywriting and stuff like that. But, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I built a couple GPTs this weekend, and I'll just show you a few of them. But more importantly, I'm going to show you like why they work and how you can kind of utilize this on your own. So the first one I built was called Lead GPT. And the goal is, the one thing, again, caveat with GPTs, it's really, really hard to do anything at scale. Like if you want to run 1,000 leads, this is probably not your tool. But I thought of it more of like, it's a great opportunity to drill down to what my use case is before I go into a tool like Play and do that at scale. So just a quick example. And again, these were built over the weekend, so please don't hold me to a level of perfection with these. But let me make sure. Am I?
We can't see.
Somebody put in. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Thank you. All right. How about now?
All good.
Thank you. Perfect. All right. So this is Lead GPT, and just to give you an example, and I think this is the one I said in the maybe one of the posts. Let's just say find 5 companies in the U.S. who received pre-seed funding in the last 6 months. So a couple things you want to know about GPTs. They can utilize the tools that are built into GPTs that you can set up, right? So GPTs have web search ability. GPTs have the ability to upload CSV and Google Drive files. And then they have code interpreter, which gives you the ability to like upload a CSV and write formulas or figure out what an API call means. So you can drive the GPT to use the built-in tools, like the web search that's built in. And that's what it's actually doing in this case. It's using the built-in web search. Or you can drive GPT to use customized actions. And actions are really the power of some of these GPTs, because if you can successfully build an action somewhere, especially in a tool that gives you the ability to pretty much copy and paste that action into a GPT without knowing how to do all the coding, then you can pretty much do what you want with GPTs, right? So the challenge is they're not built, at least today, to run a whole bunch of scale, right? So if you wanted a GPT that your VA could take email replies and upload them into a GPT and do some stuff to create a reply to that reply, easy. But if you wanted to have 1,000 replies handled at a time via API into a GPT, probably not the right tool for that. That's probably more of a Clay kind of thing. But just to give you an example here, it went out, it did a web search. You can see that it did that. Here's the details of that. This is the sources. So it pulled Growth List, VC Cafe. All of this would require nothing. You can do this in ChatGPT right now. So if you did not know that, I would encourage you, to utilize GPT for, kind of things like this. It will source its information. So you can see that right here, it did. But we want to take this a step further, and let's ask it, and we'll see if this works. If you know anything about GPT when it comes to emails, they tend to not want to give you email addresses, right? And so that's true whether you're using Clay and calling the OpenAI API key. So one of the things we did in the background of this, and we'll just see how well it works, is to try to build an action that went out and did this. So looks like we're having an issue, and that's fine. I'll dive into that in a second and show you. But that was the goal, right? So could we build a relevant action? So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I just wanted you to kind of see the concept. So let's go to a different one. And I think I was trying to have fun naming these. So this one's called lead generation and research, right? So we'll try again on this one. Let's just say, find me 5 companies who in Phoenix. A little bit more of a generic search. So here's 5 companies in Phoenix. So again, using the same approach, right? It's just going out. What I thought was pretty cool with this at the end of the day is that you can upload a list. So if you just had a list, it will go out and use its web search capabilities to like find the email, not the email, the website and stuff like that. And it's pretty accurate. If you want descriptions and stuff, all of that is just included with it. And you can even add like a Google Drive and have it dynamically populate that. So that's just some of the capability I thought was cool. It's a little slow, again, if you're trying to do it 1,000 at a time, but it definitely works. And then let me see if I can find one more here. Use lead. Okay, so this is the one I kind of really wanted to show you. You know, does it really work or not, and can you take actions, right? So let's just say okay, cool. All right, so you see, obviously it's jumping right to an action that I created. So it's talking to an agent that I built, which obviously I built in Relevance AI. So we're gonna go there in a second. And let's see what it's doing, because it should be showing me. So it's searching the google.com, searching his name. And there you go, right? So small step, small leap for mankind there. But this would not happen without this action, right? So that's kind of the concept I wanted to introduce today. And now let's just show you for a minute how we built this action, right? So I don't really know if that's his email, but it's definitely his email according to the action. And the action was built off ICPs, right? And so what we did behind the scenes here, and I'll show you this actual GPT, and we attempted to kind of do it with some of the other ones, but it was a little bit more complex, is that we're using the power of the GPT to find the information. And then we wrote an API call as an action to Relevance AI to call ICPs, which we covered. We had their founder on, I think, a week and a half ago, to actually run a verified email, right? And get that verified email back. So let me show you that kind of behind the scenes, right? So first, we talk about GPTs as a whole. Very prompt driven, right? So find emails, I named it, I put a photo in there, I find verified emails, these are just description, and then I wrote this prompt, right? And so this is telling the GPT what to do. A little trick if you want to, you know, write prompts for the same thing with writing prompts in Clay, like use OpenAI, Claude, whatever, to help you write the prompt. Tell it what you want to do and tell it, I want a prompt for this. So I told GPT, I want instructions for a GPT I'm trying to create to do this. And so it accepts the file by Google Drive or CSV. I learned that if I want to do more than 5 at a time, I need to tell it to process the entire list without interruption, because it kept telling me the status of every one. And then these are some instructions I put in there, which are pretty straightforward. And then this is where I created the action right here. So I added the action. Now, if you're to look at the details of this action, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm really, really good with code. I don't know that I'm this good. But the nice thing about relevance at the end of the day is I didn't have to write this code. So that's what kind of made it cool. And I think more importantly, I want you guys to understand that this is a very simple use case. But if you start to understand tools like relevance and the capability of building something there from a tool perspective and then putting it in a functional use case like a GPT, you know, again, it's back to what I was talking about earlier. It's you're limited to your imagination. I do see some of the questions in the chat, so I'm going to finish this and then I'll definitely get back to your questions. So let me go to how we built this, right? So a couple things about relevance. There's really only two things that relevance is pretty spectacular on its own. I have somebody I'm going to bring in the next week or two that is an expert at relevance, just to further explain the power of relevance. But simply put, there's really two concepts here. There's agents. And when I talk about agents in reference to what I was talking about agents before, these are pretty robust agents that are really, again, limited by your imagination. And then there's tools. So a set of tools is what creates an agent. So I did a little work with trying to create agents and stuff. It can be done within GPT. The challenge is you've got to make two API calls, one to make the agent work, and then the other one to call the result. And that's timing wise, that's a little tricky. I pulled it off, but I wasn't comfortable enough where I'm like, I would want anybody to actually try to play with this. So I just focused on tools, right? And so here's a couple examples of tools I built over the weekend. And some of them are pretty simple and some of them are pretty complex, right? So let's look at the first one, Google search, right? So it is really this easy in relevance. If you were to create a new tool, these are all the tools they already have, right? So I wouldn't have to create any of these. So website scraping, calling Airtable, analyze the CSV, ask the internet, Google searches, etc. Right? So there's the one I'm talking about, Google search. And what I like about it, and what's pretty unique about it, is that it uses API-based searching and it's fast. So kind of the cool things about these tools are you can do them one-off, you can run them in bulk within relevance, you can call them via API, you can log and look at the history of them, you can clone and edit them and change them. And so, and even if you want to, you can add any of these tools to a GPT. So when I hit new, you see this button up here that says custom action GPTs. If I click that, I can pull the tools. So there's the Google search tool right there. I generate an API key. I copy that API key. Here. Paste it there. And then I go one step further and I say generate OpenAI schema. Remember that complicated code that I just showed you? I copy it. I paste it here, hit save, hit test. And now whatever tool I just built is into my GPT. So let me give you an example of some of the tools that you can build. This is where, to me, it starts to get a little bit more real, right? So first one, call ICPs. So you get a little bit more familiar with this as you do it, but essentially every tool can have a knowledge base, which is extremely powerful if you understand knowledge bases. Like imagine chatbots with knowledge bases, right? Whatever knowledge you want to add to the chatbot, that's a knowledge base. This is knowledge base is done right, meaning this knowledge gets vectorized, it's easy to access. You can add files, you can add websites, you can import data from third party, you can kind of see, you know, et cetera, all the different capabilities you have. The second one, you can input data, right? So if you want to input data, you know, you can input data from text drop downs, numeric, URLs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. OAuth, APIs. So there's all kinds of ways to get data in. And then finally, you just build the tool however you want to build it, right? So if you want to run a large language model, you can run any large language model. You can run APIs. So as you can kind of tell, this one's pretty complex, right? This one that I built. And what it does is it actually runs another tool first, which is a GPT-4 Omni Google search tool, basically my version of ClayGent. And then it plugs in the domain, looks for the founder, and then I have a couple LLMs running to find the first name, find the last name so that the data comes out properly. And then I'm calling ICPs to get the first name and the last name. So if you remember a minute ago when I said, who's the CEO of Google? How did I get that result? What I did is it ran through my version of ClayGent and then output the first name and output the last name so I could have structured data to plug into the GPT, the first name, last name, and then I now have their domain. I put in a delay because it takes about 10 seconds to pull an email from ICPs because it also includes verification and everything else. And then I got an output, right? So this is definitely more complex than maybe where you want to start with, unless you're familiar with this kind of stuff. But it could be as simple, again, as calling a Google search, right? So just imagine how far we've come where when they launched just 6 months ago, you couldn't use ChatGPT to do Google searches. Today, you can come into a tool like Relevance, copy and paste some code with a tool that's already built, build yourself a GPT, and now you have Google search built within your GPT. You can personalize first lines with LinkedIn, right? Just another example. The true, I think, game-changing power of tools like Relevance is you can see I've already built workflows to call Clay, improve your copy, research any business. But if that's not your cup of tea, then you can take any one of these tools, modify them, and customize them to whatever you want to do, right? So let's copy this tool. This is what it comes with, but let's just say we want to add other things to it. I can add any large language model, Google search parameter, extract website, run APIs, send calls, run Appify. We've talked about Appify before. Check calendars. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, right? So I want to make it distinguished. Like this tool doesn't replace Clay, but think of this as like your tool to run AI agents that then you can feed data to Clay or get data out of Clay or drive your email campaigns, right? We're showing you today how we use it for GPTs, but this could be like a whole consortium on its own. But if you're not aware of it, it's well worth exploring because it's I think it's kind of the future of orchestration, and it goes back to my point in the beginning where it's like we're entering that third phase of being able to do things autonomously. And when you can build agents and workflows like this, obviously I'm demonstrating it via GPT, but when you can build and demonstrate and execute workflows and all you need is an input, it's tools like this that will give you that ability. My caveat, and I believe this firmly, right now it takes tools like Relevance to make this happen. I'm not going to put it past OpenAI or Google with their billion-dollar budgets to basically at some point say, plug in your API key, tell the GPT what you want it to do, and it will do all this for you, right? I think that's very, very possible, especially as fast as they're moving. But if you're looking to do stuff like this today, even if you just want to query your own database or drop a CSV, the agent capability in this tool is pretty ridiculous. So I'll wrap up with this: is that I'm going to show you in real time how easy this is. And so let's just say, for sake of not doxing anybody, we'll just use myself. So I'll say Josh. We'll just give myself an imaginary last name. I work at let's see, where do I want to work today? I work at small time consulting, and my email is josh@smalltimeconsulting.com. Okay, so this is an eight. Sorry,
Forget it. Sorry.
that's okay. Yeah, I was typing at the bottom. Sorry if we couldn't see that. But so this is an agent that I built, and I'm not using it, but I just built it because I could. And so it's going to tag this person. It's going to scrape the website. And it probably won't find anything. I should have thought of that because probably small time consulting is not real. But it's going to do Google search. It'll enrich LinkedIn profiles, simple lead scoring tool. It'll do lead enrichment. It'll do industry research, right? So I probably should have used a real person, but let's just see what happens. So you can see these steps that are happening. They are really happening. And then at the end of the day, it's going to write a custom email that introduces my offer to them. And this is probably a little bit inaccurate because I didn't pick a real person, but it just shows you like, and this can be run via API. I can literally connect this to, I'll just show you this agent in configuration. I can tell this agent what to do, and I could even connect this agent to my Gmail account. So just in a matter of minutes, literally minutes, I could write a prompt that tells the agent what to do, connect it to my Gmail account, and have it reply to all my emails for me. And using all the tools that I just showed you, these are some of those tools that I built into the GPT, and I could build my own customized tools. So I guess kind of the point there is that AI agents are a lot closer than you think. Like they can do a lot more. A tool like Relevance gives you the ability to do it on your own. But I think the idea, again, and I'll reiterate, is that we're probably a lot closer than you think to where these tools like Google, Microsoft, et cetera, are basically going to say, like, by prompt, tell me what you want to do, and it'll orchestrate it for you. But in the interim, any variation of this, whether it be tools or agents, even today, as I've showed you, like you can build them into things like GPT. It's just a little bit of time. And then, relevance costs money, right? So how many credits, what's the value, what's the return on that investment, et cetera. So that's it for today. That was a lot, but there was a lot of questions. So I wanted to save time for the questions. So let's see. So Dominic first, will it write back to CSV? Yes, it will. So, in any kind of tool, any kind of GPT now, and this actually came with GPT-4 Omni, but you can add a Google Drive file and just pick your, whatever you want to add, whatever sheet. I think I have one called leads. Let me see real quick. Yeah. And then it will upload that file. I think I've got some sample data in here. And let's see.
You're not sharing your screen. You're trying.
Thank you. Let me show that again here. So you go now, if you're on GPT-4 or you're in Chat GPT, you should see a button that says upload from computer, add to Google Drive, or you can even connect like your Microsoft OneDrive or SharePoint if it's business. But I'm going to use add to Google Drive. I'm going to type in leads, which is a sample file I have, and I can upload that immediately, and it's going to read it. So there's obviously I don't have much on it, but then kind of from there, I could do whatever I want. And then whenever I'm done, I just tell it by prompt to upload the connected Google Drive. Hopefully that answers the question. Yep, and it will do the same thing with CSV, just so you know, Dominic, it'll do both Google Drive and CSV, which I would tell you, like, if you're still doing stuff in Excel and trying to write formulas and stuff, Like if you take anything away from today, start doing this. Like, because you could have files of hundreds. What it is good at is like uploading a file of like 1,000 values or whatever and saying, write a formula to determine this. It will do all that very, very fast. It just can't call APIs very fast, if that makes sense. So let's see. Do you ever use GPT to help you write effective clay prompts or for creative workflows to absolutely, Sean. So I would tell you even better than GPT. Let me show you another tool I've used. It's called po.com. And why I use po.com is because it gives you access to every model that's out there. So there's GPT-4, Omni, Gemini, Flash, etc. I use this all the time for prompt creation. And so that's honestly, that's how I get my prompts to be effective. Not because I'm an expert prompt writer, is because I know to use models to teach me how to prompt. And so I'll give you an example. Let's see if I have an example here. Yeah, so I was trying to improve a prompt. Here's a perfect example. I was trying to improve a prompt, right? So I said, I want this prompt to be more focused on the owner persona versus founder persona. Help me improve it. And then I just literally cut and paste my prompt. And then it gave me a new prompt. So here's your refined, and it did that from GPT-4. But let's just say I thought, oh, well, that's great. Thank you. I want to try it, but I want to see what Claude Opus tells me. This is the power of Po because I can click Claude Opus. And now Claude Opus is going to do the same thing, except it's going to give me its version of this prompt, right? So the best thing I can teach you here is like find a tool like Po that has multiple outputs in real time so you can see, because they all have their strengths, they all have their weaknesses, but then utilize these large language models to write your prompts for you and just tell them what kind of prompt you want them to write.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I'll definitely share the GPTs. We'll put that in the comments as well. I can't promise that they're, you know, superstar values at the moment, but it was more to kind of demonstrate the concept. But I definitely know the one with verifying the email does work. So if you add a knowledge base, does it only operate off that or wider internet knowledge? It really depends on what you put in the knowledge base. So you can tell it to only call from the knowledge base. So let's just say you have a knowledge base with thousands of lines of data. Maybe it's, you know, a big spreadsheet. You can tell it to, it's all about how you prompt the subsequent actions, right? So you want to kind of test both. I think knowledge bases are developing rapidly, but I don't know that, like I've actually written email copy from a knowledge base dynamically, so it definitely can be done. It's just, I think, Dominic, the best answer to that question is, you know, it depends on how you structure your knowledge base and what you put in it versus if you call like a website, you know, depending what technique you use, you can get good results either way. But I think knowledge bases are definitely the future of any kind of AI agent, right? That they have some set of, like a brain, some subset of knowledge, and then they're as good as that knowledge that they have or what they can call via API like a website. So
I could prompt it specifically and just say, hey, I'd like, you know, for this portion of the output, I'd like you to look at the knowledge base for this company's value proposition. For the rest, you can use your wider knowledge. Something like that you can do. Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And more so, I think what I'm really excited about with knowledge bases is they're getting easy to vectorize. And just if you guys don't know, vectorizing is taking like a sentence that's great from a website or from a Word document and converting that into code so that the large language models can process it fast and understand it. That capability is getting better and faster. And so I envision knowledge bases are, you know, going to dynamically just change everything. I just use Relevance because it's the best tool I've seen so far to do that at scale. If that makes sense. can we just bypass using a GPT and OpenAI and build this result? Absolutely, right? So yeah, GPT was just a way to kind of demonstrate that it can be done, but you can absolutely connect Relevance and other tools directly to your CRM or your Instantly or whatever you can call via webhook or anything else. Jesse, would you be able to build one to sell to users? Of course. Yeah. I mean, one of the things you would have to figure out is like, how do you commoditize it? Because Relevance, like Clay, they're their own tools. So it's really, you're essentially selling relevance capacity through a tool versus selling a product. But I think, there's a 1,000 startups born every week that are selling some version of this. They're just doing it from the back end, right? So every chatbot is some version of this. And, there's 100 new chatbots on Facebook every day. So I think you can sell it. I want you guys to kind of see and open your imagination to, you can orchestrating things is what gives you the ability to sell things, right? And this gives you the ability to at least orchestrate whatever you can come up with. If I were to, these agents that I build, if I were going to put them into Clay or into my CRM within Clay, the only way you can do it right now is via webhook. So you'd have to push to a webhook in Clay, and you can do that in Relevance. In a CRM, the output of whatever the agent that I built in would come I'd push it via API. No different than kind of how I showed on the screen, how I pushed the output of different tools into ICPs. You can do the same thing with your CRM. So, and I think I even showed kind of from the agent perspective, there's even an option to import input via CRM. So HubSpot specifically is actually here, right? So you can kick off an agent with HubSpot and map it that way, and then you would just have to push the output via API. And there actually may be a tool to connect back to HubSpot right back in there. So it is very, very possible to run agents on the back end of your CRM. And you just need to be able to build the agent and connect the API. I'm looking for any more questions. There's really not today another way to get business owners without paying for it, right? I think at the end of the day, it's like you can get business owners from databases, or you can get them from their website or their Google business profile. And that's conversational AI, right? Or it's conversational scraping, and it's subjective, right? Because, there might be 19 names on my website, but unless I tell you I'm the owner of the company, that's the way to get it. Unfortunately, that data is, it's cheap. I mean, when you're talking about 1 or 2 cents to accurately use LLMs or scraping tools to get it, but I don't know that that's necessarily cheaper or effective to answer your question. Obviously you can go buy that data, but there's really not an easy way that I've seen, and I kind of pay attention to that because especially since Clay import data is free, getting the business owner name is pretty impressive. So, yeah, thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Jesse. I know it's a lot, but hopefully it'll give you something to kind of go back and watch and experiment with and play with and open your imagination. And that was kind of the goal for today. So thank you, everybody.